Welcome back. I am your host. I am attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560, The Answer.
And now, here's that man with a head just crammed full of knowledge, Mr. Know-It-All.
That's right.
So Debbie doesn't play any games. We're not
playing games anymore. We're not trying to find a way to,
come up with it. This is the best way to do
that
it.
Is
Cut Jim right out.
No more messing with those puzzle pieces. Putting it together.
How did you know I was bad at puzzles?
I think it was a good guess.
Sudokus. Oh,
I love Sudoku.
I don't know.
I do. I love it.
I don't know how they work.
I haven't done them in a while, but I used to have the book and I would do them all the time.
My mom loves Sudokus, and her first name is Sue, so we call her Sudoku Sue.
I like that. It kind of like rolls right off the tongue. Okay.
My name, I have an aunt named Doku, and we call her Sudoku. Okay, stop it, Jim.
She named herself.
What? And she's not even Japanese. I think it's Japanese.
She's
anyway,
Irish. What an odd name.
Anyway, Jim.
There's a question that I actually have.
Okay.
And it's not it's a question that came up. Yeah. It's a question that came up that I was talking with somebody and I overheard, in the conversation. If I file for bankruptcy, okay, and I'm in bankruptcy, how can the IRS still come after me?
Okay, because people say, well, I just filed bankruptcy and the IRS says I owe money. How can that be?
How can that be?
That's a very good question. And I
came up with it.
I think I mentioned earlier. I think I mentioned earlier in the show that I was at what they call a 341 meeting, and this is the meeting of creditors for bankruptcy people. And that was yesterday, and I was there, and you're in this big room.
Were you part of the 700 club too?
A lot of the big box outfits attorneys are there, and they have lines and lines of cases every day that they're. And I was talking to one young lady from one of the big box outfits, and she said to me, "How many cases do you have here today?" And I had to tell her, "I only have one." Okay, because I don't do bankruptcies like they do, hundreds and hundreds. I help people who have tax problems with bankruptcy, and these are complicated. They're not the normal bankruptcy cases. I help people who are in foreclosure with bankruptcy too, but we'll get into that another day. So what happens is that a lot of these bankruptcy outfits, they don't understand taxes. And so you go to them and you say, the IRS is coming after me. Well, we could stop the IRS from coming after you if you file bankruptcy. And so they file bankruptcy, either a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. And we'll talk about that another time too. And what happens is the IRS stops coming after them because the automatic stay comes in place. And the automatic stay is the order from the court that prevents the creditors from coming against you. But what happens when the case is over? If it's a Chapter 7, that's going to be over in about 4 months, 5 months. Well, guess what? The IRS, unless it meets the technicalities, and I'm just going to review them quickly with you. They have to be due more than 3 years ago. They have to be filed more than 2 years ago. There has to be assessed more than 240 days ago. There can't be any fraud. You can't have tried to avoid taxes. If all of that's true, well, then they're dischargeable in bankruptcy. It means you can get rid of them and never pay the IRS for them again. But if those things aren't true, then when you come out of bankruptcy, you still owe the IRS. And sometimes people come to see me and say, I filed, and this thing happens to them. And the IRS is still coming after them. And I look at the numbers, and I say, if they would have waited 2 months, you could have walked away from all of this debt. But because your bankruptcy lawyer didn't look to see about the taxes and didn't really understand discharging IRS debt in bankruptcy, that they filed too soon, and if you just would have waited 60 days, you could have walked away. But they didn't, so you can't, and that's a problem. Again, so if you're thinking, if you have IRS problems, you're thinking, and you have all these other debts, and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to file bankruptcy. Well, then you need to contact someone who whether it's me or someone else. Of course, I understand bankruptcy because that's one of the 6 things you can do if you owe the IRS money, right? File bankruptcy. So get somebody that understands it. Now, I've had people who went through Chapter 13 to get rid of their bankruptcy debt. their IRS debt, and they pay for 5 years in a Chapter 13 plan. They come out of the 5 years, and they think that they've gotten rid of the IRS, and the IRS starts knocking on their door again. You owe us. You still owe us. And
Are you there?
And they're shaking their head, thinking, "How can I still owe you? I just spent 5 years in bankruptcy," because they weren't dischargeable. And if they're not dischargeable when you file, then when you come out of bankruptcy, you're still going to owe them. And that's just the way it is.
That's terrible.
I know it is. And that's why...
That's just the way it is.
Bankruptcy's hard enough, right?
You see what I was doing there?
Yeah, I did see.
Things will never be the same.
It's true. Bankruptcy's hard enough. But if you have IRS debt and you're thinking about bankruptcy, get somebody who knows what they're doing
I had
to help you. Get you... Yeah, I understand. Get someone to help you. And that's what Opem Tax Resolutions does. And the law office of Stephen A. Leahy, PC. We help people solve their IRS problems. And sometimes that solution involves bankruptcy. And we understand bankruptcy. So again, give us a call. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Know-It-All.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Know-It-All. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any tax problems whatsoever, bankruptcies, if you need help, this is the guy to go to.
Absolutely true. 312-664-6649. Visit us on the web at chicagotexting.com.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't change that dial. We're wrapping the show up, and we're going to do it in amazing way.
Fashion.
So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned here on AM 560.
The Answer.